Hey, thanks for being with us this afternoon. I'm Dr. James Boone. I'm the medical director here at La Hacienda, boarded in internal medicine and addiction medicine. And so I'll be answering some of our calls. Also with us today, and I'll have them introduce themselves, our director of nurses.
I'm Rika Sorensen.
Rika will be answering some of the specific questions, specifically as it relates to detox and our detoxification unit and our nursing care. And then also with us is Janet.
Hi, y'all. I'm Janet Blackburn. I'm the clinical director at La Hacienda. I'm a social worker and an LCSW and an LCDC. Okay, I'm going to ask the first question. How about that?
Sounds good.
That way you have to answer. Okay, this one came in, and it says, what are the signs of someone with a drug and alcohol problem?
So I think all of us obviously kind of recognize that, of kind of what that is, but there are some specific sort of criteria. The one thing that I would say, just sort of in my experience, is that in general, people that don't have a drug or alcohol problem, usually people aren't very suspicious of. So commonly kind of that old adage of where there's smoke, there's fire, I think can be pretty appropriate when we're talking about addiction. So the fact that even somebody has suspicion, I think at first should actually raise a red flag just by themselves. There's some really simple tools. There's a bunch of different screening questionnaires. One of the best known that's also very simple is something called the CAGE, C-A-G-E. Each one of those stand for something, an acronym for an alcohol assessment quiz, and that's a really simple tool to kind of, if you're listening and you're wondering about yourself, or if it's somebody in your family or a close friend, it's a really simple 4-question assessment. That C stands for, have you ever felt that you should cut down on your drinking? Now, each one of these questions, just kind of think about is worth 1 point. So it's just a yes or no answer, simple yes or no answer. Second thing is, have people annoyed you? The A stands for annoyed you by criticizing your drinking. And that's worth 1 point. And then the G is, have you ever felt guilty, felt bad or guilty about your drinking, about how much you drank? And really this can be applied to other substances. It's specifically talking about alcohol, but some of those can be applied to other substances. And then the E stands for, quote-unquote, an eye-opener. Have you ever had a drink first thing in the morning to kind of calm your nerves or get rid of a hangover, or to have an eye-opener? And, basically, if people answer positive to all 4 of those questions, it's a greater than 90% predictive value, actually, for a true alcohol use disorder diagnosis. If it's 2 or 3 points, if you answer yes to 2 or 3 of those, the risk of having an alcohol problem is extremely high, and even answering yes to 1 of those 4 questions definitely raises enough concern that it ought to be explored. That's been a well-documented tool that has been looked at in multiple different studies, and can be a really simple kind of answer. And then there are other specific kind of set criteria that you could go over, and we might talk about that a little bit later in the conference, depending if we have time or not. But I think to start with, just to kind of think about that CAGE questionnaire would be sort of a simple thing to think about. Mm-hmm. You want to kind of elaborate just on that, kind of what that means in time and efforts, or what that looks like? Yeah,
I think that's an excellent tool. Of course, you have to be able to give somebody that tool and then be willing to fill it out, right? So if you're just wondering, say you're the boss of someone and you're concerned about a problem, or a teacher, or a coworker, maybe somebody you're not so close to, the biggest thing is some of the simple signs are just a change. Something changes. You sense that something's different. It could be a change in their energy level, their moods, their attitudes. It could be a change in the interest in activities, in performance. It could be a change in performance if you're the boss. It could be a change in their spending habits or maybe needing money early. It could be a change in accidents, increase in accidents, or decrease in performance. There's a lot of different things. But the key word that I'm using here is change. Something is changing in the individual that you just can't quite put your finger on. Because let's face it, people don't come in and say, to any situation, say, by the way, I'm struggling with drugs and alcohol, so you might be noticing a change in behavior.
Right. In kind of what Janet said, just a few of those criteria. We have there's sort of a textbook called the DSM Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and that 5th version of that in the DSM-5 just kind of has some specific criteria, and I won't read all 11 of those, but basically, even if you have answered positive to 2 of those, would be considered 2 to 3 mild alcohol use disorder, and 4 to 6 of them could be moderate use disorder, and more than 6 would be severe. But just some of those things, kind of like Janet alluded to. One would be had times when you ended up drinking more or longer than you intended. Second thing, more than once wanted to cut down or stop drinking, or tried to but couldn't. Number 3, spent a lot of time drinking or being sick or getting over after the after effects, being so hungover that you didn't go into work, that kind of stuff. Wanted to drink so badly you couldn't think of anything else. That real obsession that just kind of dominates your thought process. Number 5, found that drinking or being sick from drinking often interfered with taking care of your home, family, job problems, school problems. Number 6, continue to drink even though it was causing trouble with your family or friends. Where in most things, if it's in relationship, if there's something that's really damaging or putting your marriage or major friendships at risk, typically we don't do those things anymore. And so if people continue that certainly is concerning. Given up or cut back on activities that were important or interesting to you or gave you pleasure in order to drink. Several more of those, but just where it becomes a pretty dominant factor in your life. And so anytime that it's consuming your thought time, your finances, interfering with relationships, those are all, I think, probably some of the key markers.